Good morning. Yes, beautiful day. I thought I'd share this moment with you and come send some positivity your way. Do you let rats in your mind?
You have to believe it all starts in your mind.
So, have you ever been negatively affected by someone? Have you ever been negatively affected by someone sending you a message? Through a text message, through a WhatsApp? Have you ever been negatively affected by something someone said on social media? Have you ever negatively been affected by the news? Have you negatively been affected by an ex-partner saying something about you that may or may not be true? Well, I know I have, and I'm sure you have too. But this is something that we have to be mindful of what we let in our mind. So I want to give you an analogy. So you have a home and you're mindful. I'm maybe you do, but maybe you're not. I'm sure, I don't want to make an assumption, but I don't think you just let anyone into your home. Well, this is the same about our mind. So imagine you have a home and you have this friend, and this friend comes over and they come over and you invite them over. They're like, oh yeah, hey, yeah, just put your shoes down there, and they don't take your shoes off. And then while you're sitting there, they have a bag and they just let rats into your house, and you'd be like, oh, excuse me, what are you doing? And they're like, oh, I'm just letting rats off in your house. And you'd be like, please don't do that. And they're like, okay, I'll stop. And they're like, okay. So he stops, but now you got a couple of rats in your house. You're like, okay. But then you see he does it again, and you're like, well, what are you doing? And he's like, well, I'm just letting rats off in your house. You're like, no, stop. And finally you say, all right, man, you got to get out of my house. You can't be letting rats in my house. And one of the odd things about rats is they procreate. They start festering. They start gnawing. They start gnawing at your house, and they start multiplying. Well, it's interesting. We hear this analogy and we're like, instantly like, yeah, I would never do that. But it's the same thing with our mind. Our mind is, we have to be just as careful with our mind as we do with our house. And so what these rats are is a metaphor for negative people, negative influences. So are you letting negative influences affect your mind? And ultimately, what that's doing is taking from your state. It's taking from your positivity. It's taking from your feel-goods. It's taking from your dreams. So what we have to do is we have to be very careful of who and what we surround ourselves with. So Zig Ziglar has this acronym called a SNIOP. So he says, like, what it means is, are you susceptible to the negative influences of other people? And if you are, there's a couple things that we have to address then. So first off, if you're being in an environment that is not supporting you, then it's time to change. Tony Robbins says the fastest way to change your life is change your environment. So we have to take 100% responsibility for who and what we surround ourselves with. I know a long journey, guys. It's been a long journey to get here. Although I spent a lot of time in beaches, I know that a lot of people haven't fully supported me. A lot of people haven't wanted the best interest for me. A lot of my so-called friends didn't want me sober. They wanted me to be that crazy party guy. And so what I had to do without realizing at that time is I was changing my environment. So the first thing is change your environment. If your environment's not supporting you, it's time to make a change. Second of all, who are you surrounding yourself with? When you show up and you've always got that friend that's just, woe is me, and it's all negative, and it's like my life sucks, and you're there trying to help them get better, you're there trying to positively influence them, and everything they go about is just negative. Well, my mentor said, well, I guess it's time to get some new friends. So, but let's say that the third way is like, you can't always get rid of everyone, and it's not that you have to get rid of them, it means you just have to minimize your time. But let's say you're around a negative family member, or your partner doesn't support you, or someone that you're around is not supporting you and that has a negative influence. Well, what do you do then? Well, there's two things. The first thing is you can observe. You can observe their thoughts and you can observe what they're saying. But you don't have to take on what they're saying. You don't have to let that in your mind. You don't have to let that rat in your mind. Or what you can do is express a boundary. So this is huge. This is really huge. This is something I learned deeply this year, is how to express your boundary. Now, if you haven't heard about this or you haven't learned about this, I'll do a video for you. But just to brief you on it, what you do is you need to first identify what you can and cannot accept. That's huge. That's huge. What do you want? And it's not selfish to look out for you, because all you have is you, or so to speak, self. So find out what it is you like, what it is you don't like, and what you can and cannot accept. Is the people you're surrounding by affecting you? Are they negatively influencing you? Well, you gotta do a self-audit, and you gotta be like, look, I don't want this in my life anymore. It's time to make a change. And when you come to that point, it's a magical moment. They call it the 10-second miracle. And that 10-second miracle is the moment you decide when you're gonna change your life. So if that person's expressing negatively to you or saying things that maybe you don't want to hear about. So to give you an example, for me, my boundary right now is what's going on currently with COVID. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to hear about it. It's all good. If you got it, you can be with it. But for me, I just don't want that rat in my head. I don't want that negative influence in my head. So what I do is, if I'm in a situation where people are talking about it, I'm quite a talker, but I get really quiet. I get really quiet because I'm just not buying in. And then what I do is I slowly remove myself from the situation. I'll be like, all right, guys, that's me. I gotta go. And I just slip out. Before, this wasn't so easy for me, but I practice now quite often. But so if, let's say, you can't get out of that situation and you have to be there, and you say it's a family occasion and you got to be around the family members, what you can do is express your boundary. You can say, look, I'm sorry, but this is something that I can't accept anymore. It's something I've decided for me, and I no longer want that in my life. And so obviously when you're expressing a boundary for the first time, it may not be received fully. So you got to understand that they're hearing this for the first time. But if you've expressed a couple times and the pattern keeps repeating itself, well, now it's time to do a serious audit and see how much time you actually want to spend. So now it's time to really minimize the amount of time you spend around these people. So our mind is like a fertile garden, and we have to look at our mind like we're a gardener, and we have to be the keeper of our mind. So if we have negative thoughts or rats in our mind, we have to get them out of the house. We have to get them out of our brain so that we can think positively. So you're asking me, okay, so say I got rats in my head. What are some of the solutions? What are some of the things I can do to get the rats out of my head? Well, first of all, what are you feeding your brain? What are you feeding your mind? What is influencing you? Are you watching influential people? Are you watching inspiring people? Are you looking for inspiring stories? Who's your influence? First of all, what are you feeding your brain? Okay, so then next, all right, now we've understood what we got to put in our brain. Now let's say what's the next source? So we've got 3 ways of input. We can go to events. Obviously, you can't go to events right now, but surround ourselves by positive people. We can listen to positive people, and we can read positive information, like the books of Napoleon Hill and Think and Grow Rich and The Magic of Thinking Big. All these positive influences are good ways to get positive influence through our brain. But you know what? I wasn't always able to surround myself by positively people. So what I had to do is constantly surround myself by myself and my YouTube mentors. And when I say mentors, it's all people online. I haven't really had in-person mentors. So I've had to listen to people on my own and separate myself from negative influences. And it's been very positively affected me because I'm the keeper of my own mind. All right, so then how do you get the rats out of your brain? Well, first of all, you have to become aware of what is running you. What negative thoughts are running you? Are you constantly thinking negatively? Like, so for example, you're wanting to go do something and you're like, my negative thoughts, like you become aware of your negative thoughts. So when, let's say you want to go move out of your house and you're like, I'm so scared, I'm not good enough, it's going to be scary, da 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 da. These are all programs in your mind. This is programmed that has been given to you from someone else. This is a fear. So you have to bring conscious awareness to this rat, so to speak. And when you can bring conscious awareness, you become mindful of that thought, and you have to instantly go in your brain, go like this. Cancel, or as Ed Milet says, scratch it. And you want to scratch that thought. And then what you want to do is, once you become mindful of that thought, then what you want to do is replace it with a positive reinforcement that, you know what, when I move out, it's going to be awesome. It's going to be great. I'm going to have so much fun. And maybe you don't believe it at the beginning. Maybe you don't feel that. But it's a process. So if you're gardening, you're not going to get all the weeds out all at once. Maybe in a session, depending on how diligent you are, but our mind is so susceptible to negative influences that it takes no effort, and we've created neural pathways within our brain to think negatively. So what I want to leave you here is this idea of rats in your brain, and are you currently letting rats in your mind? So with that, I hope that you can do some, I don't know what the word is for taking out rats of your brain, but I hope that you can gain benefit from this, and I share my peace and I share my love.